Here we are at the foothill of the Appalachian Mountains in Georgia. It's December 22nd. We're here for Christmas. We have nothing better to do, so we've decided to make a potato gun that is both fun and safe to use. We've just driven to our local home improvement store to buy the supplies we need for the potato gun. Some PVC pipe, some shipping tape, some hairspray, aerosol spray, and some potatoes, of course. So let's go inside and get what we need. Okay, so we've just returned from the home improvement store. We have our supplies on the table in front of us. Everything you see here was about $30. We have a 1.5 inch diameter PVC pipe, which will be the barrel of our potato gun. We have a 3-inch diameter pipe, which will function as the ignition chamber. We also have a 3-inch PVC T, which will house the ignition switch and function as a handle. We've drilled a 5/8 inch hole in the handle here, and this is where the ignition switch will insert. We have a 3-inch and a 2-inch PVC cleanout. This is for the back end of the cannon as well as the handle. And then we have a 1.5 inch to 3-inch PVC conversion, which will provide the coupling between the 3-inch ignition chamber and the 1.5 inch barrel. Here we have a regular gas grill ignition switch. Functions just like a spark plug. Some PVC cement. Important for safety, we also purchased some packing tape that has been reinforced with fibers. We also have a can of hairspray here, which will be our primary ignition fluid. Tools that we will need, we have sandpaper to rough up the edges of the PVC before we glue them. We have gloves so that we don't get glue all over our hands, and a hacksaw which will let us get these PVC pipe lengths down to the length we want. Alright, so let's get started. This PVC pipe is a little too long of an ignition chamber, so in order to cut it down to size, we've taped a piece of paper at one end, and we are using a magic marker to mark the line at which we will cut. So I'm going to finish this line here. Once that is done, remove the paper, and we'll begin with a hacksaw to cut the pipe down. Okay, once we have this cut and the end sanded, put on some gloves and we'll begin cementing the cannon together. Okay, we're roughing up the PVC before we cement the pieces. Just a quick pass with sandpaper is enough. Okay, we have our PVC cement. We're going to apply that to our pieces. So we've attached the back end of the ignition chamber using the PVC cement. Remember, when you do this, always do it in a well-ventilated area. This is very toxic stuff. Also, when you're attaching two parts of the PVC, you'll need to apply some pressure. It doesn't always go together so easily. So apply pressure, get it together quickly. It sets very quick, but once it's set, it's a very strong bond. So the next step, we're going to insert our ignition switch into the handle. So our gas grill ignition switch has 2 electrodes on it. When the ignition switch is depressed, an electric current is passed through one of those electrodes and will spark over to the second electrode if they're close enough. We're going to make a slight modification to this ignition switch by wrapping some galvanized wire, thin galvanized wire, around one electrode and bringing it up to the other electrode so it's about 1 centimeter away, just like a spark plug. This is just like how a spark plug functions. So when the ignition switch is depressed, the electrode will shoot a spark to the other one and cause ignition within the ignition chamber. We have our galvanized wire wrapped around one end of the ignition switch. I'm simply going to bend it over the second electrode so that when we fire the ignition switch, a spark travels from that electrode up to the extended wire. Okay, now that we have the ignition chamber assembled, we are going to attach the converter and the barrel to that. So again, PVC cement. You'll notice we ran out of gloves. We've switched to leather. Okay, we have cut our barrel down to about 32 inches from the 6 feet of 1.5 inch PVC pipe we originally purchased. The longer the barrel, the straighter the potato will travel, but it also will exit slower. So we've gone about halfway the full length. Hopefully a good mix of speed and accuracy. So here's our PVC gun all together. The glue is dried. Next step is to install the ignition switch. We have sanded the ignition switch to roughen up the surface so that the glue we adhere it to the gun with will hold better. We are going to use a 2-part epoxy for the glue. So let's start by applying some of the glue to the end of the ignition switch. Okay. Put it inside here. Once we have the epoxy applied on the outside, I'm going to apply some additional epoxy on the inside. Take the cap off the end. The ignition switch is right there on the inside. We can add some epoxy to our applicator stick. Okay, now with our ignition switch in place and the epoxy drying, the next step is to wrap the barrel and the ignition chamber with this fiber reinforced packing tape. This will ensure that the gun does not shatter if part of the PVC were to fail. So we'll start at one point on the ignition barrel and keep the tape taut and wrap it around like so. You can do as many layers as you feel necessary. We're going to do about 2. Okay, it's the next day and our potato gun is ready to test. Our trigger has dried, the tape has been applied to the rest of the body, so I'm going to walk you through the steps to get the potato gun ready to fire. First step, insert the potato into the barrel of the potato gun. We've sharpened the end of the barrel just a little bit to help cut the potato when we insert it. So jam it in with your hand until the potato is fully in. And then we're going to use a jamming rod to push the potato about 3/4 of the way down the rest of the barrel. You don't want to go too far or else you will perhaps destroy your trigger. So with the jamming rod, about 3/4 of the way. Okay, before we get to the next step, I'm going to insert some ear protection. I recommend this for anyone who's going to be firing the gun. It gets kind of loud. Okay, so after the potato is inserted, turn the gun around. You're going to unscrew the end of the ignition chamber. This part's really nice to have somebody assist you, so why don't I get somebody over here? We're going to spray about a second and a half of hairspray into the end of the ignition chamber. Then we're going to recap it quickly and fire quickly. You don't want to let the hairspray sit for too long or else it'll dissipate and you'll have a misfire. So let's load. Okay, aim. fire. Loading is to insert. Next step, we fire. Aim, and fire. Aim, and fire.
No. Just open it up and try to shoot it now.
Where is it?
There you go.